Welcome to Community Partners Interview, where we explore the organizations, opportunities, and resources that look to make change in our daily lives. I'm your host, Jocelyn Dore, and you're listening to Voices for Ability Radio. All abilities, all the time. Today, I'm joined by Erin Burke, who is the Community Liaison Coordinator and the Operations Manager for Inclusion Canada, Newfoundland and Labrador. Inclusion Canada, Newfoundland and Labrador is a nonprofit organization that works with and on behalf of persons with intellectual disabilities and their families. Inclusion Canada, Newfoundland and Labrador promotes communities where everyone belongs and has a rightful place where families support a person's right to full citizenship. Thank you for joining us today, Erin.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit more about you and what inspired you to work at Inclusion Canada, Newfoundland and Labrador, and to work with individuals with disabilities.
Well, I guess that relates a little bit to the historical context of Inclusion Canada, Newfoundland and Labrador. We were actually only called Inclusion Canada, Newfoundland and Labrador starting in 2021, when the national branch kind of, put a call out for, I guess, a rebranding. I know there are still some associations for community living throughout Canada, and that's what Newfoundland used to have, was the Association for Community Living. So they have been around for the last 70 years, basically being strong standing leaders in advancing what is supported decision-making and the right to decide in medical, personal, and financial matters. That is a bigger policy piece that is happening with a separate steering committee within the province right now, but we're kind of the secretariat for that, and I guess the formal organization helping back it. I would say what inspired me to take on this role was the fact that, we currently have so many different systemic crises within, the Canadian economy, within the Canadian workforce. And really what this organization's intent is to make sure that everybody has a seat at the table, that nothing is being talked about without them. So I guess in regards to looking at supported decision-making or the right to decide in one's own matters, we don't want individuals to feel that, for example, under terms such as guardianship, when you no longer have a caregiver, you become a ward of the state or a ward of the province, essentially. So, that's obviously not giving somebody autonomy or necessarily a seat at the table to say, hey, this is what I would like, and I would like to be a factor in this decision about my own life, even though I have a disability. So really, I just kind of connected with that mission of autonomy and, I guess, self-determination and direction for one's own life. So that's why I started with this organization.
What is the initiatives and resources page on your website all about? Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, so basically we have a lot of community partners throughout the Metro St. John's area. So basically we connect with Empower the Disability Resource Center, we connect with Vera Palin, Avalon Employment, and a bunch of other different community partners, basically involving, I guess, different areas of disability. We also partner with the Autism Society. So basically, our resource page kind of talks about resources within the province, because we aren't a direct service. We're more of a system navigation and backline policy service. We also ourselves do provide for folks who live in Newfoundland with a valid disability tax credit certificate and who already have RDSPs open. We actually do what's called the Provincial Incentive Program, which has been funded by our Disability Policy Office through the government since 2009. And it's a one-time $150 stipend that just gets directly deposited into your RDSP. So that's a way of growing. So I guess other resources we have within the organization, so it would be myself, it would be our partnership through Ready, Willing, and Able, which Inclusion Canada on a national level is a delivery partner of Ready, Willing, and Able. And basically what that is, it's an inclusive hiring support program. So it's going to workplaces and basically pitching like, this is inclusive hiring and this is why inclusive hiring works. Now, I know, again, in the challenges we're facing nowadays, that makes it a little harder to do with employers, but we're still certainly trying. Also have set mentoring. So how set mentoring works, so basically what that means is it's students in transition. So right now, this is also a national program. However, right now in the province, it's only within the central region, and that is through our coordinator out there. She will connect with students really on a daily and weekly basis in the schools in central Newfoundland and try and connect them with mentors as they transition into employment. So let's say we have a couple different things on the go. I guess that role would be more of a direct service role, although it would be short-lived after the mentor takes over. But that's kind of the resources we have within the organization.
And can you tell me a little bit about your webinars and what they entail?
As far as I know, we as a province, I guess as a provincial organization, I don't know if we have ever hosted a webinar ourselves. I know national, inclusive education national, which is within Inclusion Canada, actually does host a lot of webinars on inclusive education and how teachers can better incorporate all students into the classroom. And also they bring in parents to discuss how their children have been able to be incorporated in the classroom successfully. So it's really to give, I guess, teachers, parents, students, really just the education system an opportunity to learn and reflect and go, okay, how can we grow? How can we make sure all students have a seat at the table? I do know that there are also Inclusion Canada national webinars regarding the disability tax credit, the RDSP, and the Canadian and provincial disability benefits and how to navigate those. Inclusion Canada also has regional navigators. So, for example, Erin is our regional navigator for the Atlantic regions, and she serves Newfoundland Labrador, Nova Scotia. She serves PEI and New Brunswick as well. So I guess a follow-up to that would be, while we're not having a webinar, we are doing, we have done educational symposiums in the past. So, for example, in 2024, we hosted a public right to decide symposium around supported decision-making and policy change within the government. And this fall, we'll be hosting our own inclusive education symposium, really focusing on strengths-based and solutions-focused alternatives to inclusive education in this province, which I think we've needed for a long time coming.
Are there any restrictions to the services at Inclusion Canada, Newfoundland and Labrador, such as age or disability type?
We specifically within our mandate, we specifically service those with intellectual and developmental disabilities and and their families. However, we also acknowledge that disability is complex. Sometimes, those diagnoses will come with a partner diagnosis, such as a physical disability or a form of neurodivergence like autism or ADHD. So I would say, while that is our mandate, also if anybody shows up at our door and is looking for help to access disability services within the province, we're not going to turn them away. We're going to inform them, hey, this is what's available for you. And the unfortunate reality is sometimes there's not always stuff available for folks. As you know, the disability benefits, both federally and provincially, often cut out by the age of 64, I believe. So sometimes when seniors call, seniors have the fewest resources that we're able to give them, at least provincially at this time, in my opinion. However, I wouldn't say, we would not turn anybody away, and we would do our best as an organization to answer questions that anyone with a disability or anybody who's a family member or a loved one with a disability, who has a loved one with a disability, we're going to try and help them best we can.
What would a common journey through Inclusion Canada, Newfoundland, and Labrador look like for one of your members?
I would say usually the most contacts I have had with folks is reaching out for the provincial incentive program. So, I've advertised for the program on our social media prior. I'm actually in the process of making a flyer to go out for the same. And basically, usually someone will reach out to me via email. I'll send them back a membership form and the provincial incentive program application form. And, that will take usually a couple weeks turnaround just by the time I get the paperwork, by the time I send it to our accountant, and by the time I send then that paperwork from our accountant to their financial institution, which they have provided me in this informatory paperwork. And I would say, I would usually follow up with them after the fact to see if they had any questions with any other kinds of services that they may need. And there's usually a little, I guess, PDF pamphlet I'll send along about, this is how, I guess, in regards to our like other programs like Ready, Willing, and Able and Set Mentoring, and if that might be useful for the loved one they're contacting us about. However, that's not always the case. Usually that's kind of where it's left. I would say most times we see our members are at our AGMs, which we have every year. And we just kind of discuss the processes that we've done throughout the year. And we want folks' opinions and feedbacks on the matter and how we can best proceed. I would also say our membership would consistently get informatory emails from me. I am subscribed to a variety of different disability initiatives from across the province and from across Canada. So there are different webinars or different informatory letters I have access to, which I forward along to our membership so they can read, ask questions, whether it's through myself or whether it's reaching out through the original communicator of that information.
Without using any names, can you share a success story with me? What supports were put into place when someone asked for help?
Okay, I would say, really, we have had an individual with us. He's actually been employed with us for it'll be 10 years next year. And he is an extraordinarily hard worker. However, he lives with a developmental disability. So some of the social cues he is a bit off on. And that can be challenging, I guess, in a standard work environment. However, he was employed previously before he was employed with us, and it wasn't a great work environment, but he wanted to continue working until he was in retirement age. So he came to us through an outside employment agency, and we navigated some barriers with him. However, he has come such a long way. Like I said, he'll be working with us 10 years next year. We actually moved into a new building about 6-7 months ago. And it was a bit of a challenge as this building is a bit bigger than where we were, and it's a shared space. So there's other tenants in the space. However, he has learned to be super polite and chatty with other tenants. He has learned to navigate the way around the building on his own without my assistance. And he's looking for more and more to do in the space because he's realizing this is a bigger space that can take up more of his time. So while they were, I guess, concerned, almost a decade ago now that where are we going to find for him to work, I guess that would be our biggest success story all in all, is giving him a sense of, I guess, community in this workplace through, actually physically doing the work and through social interactions he has with us as his peers.
Are there any events coming up for Inclusion Canada, Newfoundland, and Labrador?
Yeah, like I said, we'll be having our Inclusive Education Symposium in the fall. So that is going to be here at the Holiday Inn on October 1st. It'll be a 9 to 5 situation. And basically, it is going to be a day full of panelists discussing inclusive education in a strengths-based and solutions-focused approach. And yeah, the details are still underway for the planning of that. So the specifics, I'd say I don't quite know yet, but I'm very excited for it because it's been a long time coming.
What is one thing you see happening over and over again to individuals with disabilities that shouldn't be, and how do you think it could be stopped?
Really, what I've noticed is there's a large barrier to independent living and housing. So people really here, in order to get independent living and housing, people must fail at alternative family care at least 3 times before being considered for independent living, which is an outdated and harmful requirement. People Alternate family placements are shrinking, which is leaving people to no pathway for independence. Also, not everyone who requires alternate family care within this model has alternative family placements to go to or alternative caregiver placements to go to, whether that's not necessarily family or friend. Government and health systems are still questioning whether the alternate family model will continue at all. However, I also know there are less and less the independent living arrangements which are happening within the province. They're really leaning more towards, I guess, group collectives and long-term care, which is obviously not where folks want their children to end up when they're no longer here. I'm also noticing that a lot of folks with physical barriers within the province do not have access to accessible housing. There is one person I work with, and she has been trying to get into accessible housing for years. It's probably been between 6 and 7 years, and she's still in the same apartment. She was promised an accessible unit that was being built in another part of the city. However, she never heard back on that follow up, and she's yet to find anywhere to stay that is within the budget that is paid by income support and the Canadian housing benefit. Because again, she's disabled; she cannot work. So really, people end up being stuck. They end up being stuck in alternate care arrangements that, really don't serve them the best as it may to live independently. And you have folks who physically cannot access the spaces they're living in, but they've been given no other choice.
If someone wanted to become a member or a volunteer with Inclusion Canada, Newfoundland, and Labrador, what is the process for joining as a member and for joining as a volunteer?
Yeah, I would recommend directly reaching out to my email, which is the community email. So community@inclusioncanada.nl.ca, or the info email, which is at the same handle, which would just be info@inclusioncanada.nl.ca. We have a pretty simple form that you would fill out for membership. And also for volunteer. We don't have consistent volunteers. We really just recruit volunteers around our big events. Like in the past, we've had community breakfasts and different fundraisers, which we have recruited volunteers for. I imagine we'll be recruiting volunteers for a symposium in the fall as well, as we'll need multiple sets of hands on deck.
What is the one thing that everyone needs to know about Inclusion Canada, Newfoundland, and Labrador?
I would say really it's that we are pushing for independence for individuals in their day-to-day lives. The province is at a crossroads really right now when it comes to policy around supportive decision making and individuals with disabilities living independently. We can either modernize our systems to uphold the right to decide, or we can continue relying on outdated structures that limit people's autonomy and dignity. It's really a human rights commitment. And I guess at the end of the day, I would like folks to know that that is ultimately what we are pushing for, is for a more inclusive future, that even if folks maybe cannot traditionally communicate the way that society has wanted for years and years, they're still able to have a seat at the table and a factor in their own decisions about their own lives.
If listeners are looking for more information, what is the best way for them to reach out?
I would say through that same email, or go to our website at www.inclusioncanada.nl.ca, or reach out on any of our social media pages, which are under the same name. We have Facebook and we have Instagram.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you again for joining me today, Erin. And I really enjoyed learning about your organization.
Thank you, Jocelyn. It was nice to talk with you.
This has been a Community Partners interview on Voices for Ability Radio. All abilities, all the time.